Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My talk title is The I in Ego, and there's several reasons why I wanted to talk about this today. Because I think we encounter people over our lifetime that we would call egotistical, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they're narcissistic or whatever label we want to put on them. And I also think that we have to think about how we see this from our perspective, how we recognize it. So we might recognize the behavior at first as somebody just being positive or being sure of themselves. And then as time goes on, we think, oh, this is a great person. And then all of a sudden we start seeing the narcissistic behavior, right? And they can easily fool you in that moment too. They can make you think that, oh no, it's not me, it's you even. And so we find ourselves trapped in this whole idea of ego and stuff. And really, ego is not a bad thing if we are in balance with it. But today, what to do when we encounter egotism and how to check our own ego is what we're going to be talking about. So the second reason I wanted to talk about this is because I looked up a definition on the online dictionary of ego, and this is what it said, and it really was kind of curious because I was curious about the whole thing. The I or self of any person. Ego is Latin for I. I don't know how many people knew that or not, but isn't that interesting? Yeah, and that really sparked me to think I really need to write more about this. In psychological terms, the ego is the part of the psyche that experiences the outside world and reacts to it, coming between the primitive drives of the id and the demands of social environment represented by the superego. Okay, so according to study.com, they say this. The id is the impulsive part of your personality that is driven by pleasure and responded by pain. Okay? The superego, so you got id, superego, is the judgmental and morally correct part of your personality. And the ego is that conscious part of your personality that mediates between the id and the superego and makes decisions. And I found this cool little clip art that I think kind of explains it better. Oh, I don't want that yet. I did find a cool clip art, but it's not ready yet. Knowing, though, how all this works is really detrimental to us because we have to figure out how to find that balance between what they're talking about here, the superego, and the id, and trying to find that balance through our own ego, okay? And so if we become bruised by life, by how we were raised, by how we were treated, by how we were abused or neglected, we can become too driven to protect ourselves to the point where we create a facade. And we all know facades are not healthy, that we start putting on a different persona than who we really are. And especially if we've been around a narcissist or somebody that's really egotistical, we start feeling manipulated or moved in a direction away from who we truly are as a spiritual being. So finding ways to keep our own balance within ourselves is huge on our spiritual journey. And so we really have to look at this. And this is the visual that I was talking about. So this is the person's head. But the it is, this person says, I need to eat right this second. Anybody ever get hangry? But the superego says, because superego is kind of like God, you know, the moral part of us. You can't do that because you're in the middle of an important meeting. And so the ego is trying to balance this out, trying to be the judge and balance this out and not allow the id to take over and have the id listen to the superego. And that's where we have to realize that a lot of the things that we overreact to or even react to might not be something that we really want to do. Our spiritual self doesn't want to go there, but our id self, the part of us that is the overextended ego part of ourself, wants to go there and like out of control. And we've all had that happen before, right? Let's just use the example of being hangry. I mean, sometimes when you really feel like you need something, maybe your blood sugar's off, maybe you just need some caffeine, whatever it is, you're like determined and just focused in on that one thing, instead of saying, oh, you know what, I can get that cup of coffee later, or I can get a bite to eat later, or I can soothe myself in that moment to not overreact. You know, I see it with the boys sometimes, and especially JW, because like if he needs something, because he doesn't eat a whole lot at one time sometimes, you know, that's just his metabolism. But he'll sometimes when he's hungry, he'll like kind of get barky, you know. It's like, you need something to eat, don't you? And he'll like lighten up a little bit. But we have to try to find that balance, and you know that kids have to learn to regulate themselves in those moments. And as adults, we forget that we too still might need to regulate ourselves instead of reacting to everything. And especially if we've been hurt before, like the previous life, where we were hurt as a child, we were hurt, you know, somewhere along the line. It can show up in us at any given moment of time. Okay, from the revealing word, the adverse ego. When the ego attaches itself to sense consciousness, is what I'm talking about, it builds the Antichrist man who has no basis in reality. This is known as the adverse ego. This is what Fillmore tells us. And he goes on with this. It is the adverse ego that causes all the trouble in the world. Its selfishness and greed make men grovel in the mirror of materiality when they might soar in the heavens of spirituality. And I love that quote, because that thinking about soaring in the heavens of spirituality, isn't that where we want to be? Isn't that where we'd like to be lifted up every day of our lives? I mean, I just reading that just makes me think, you know, it's attainable. It's something we can strive for. It's something we can do. And that balance that we find within ourselves is how we get there. And, you know, of course, putting God in there. But anything that is what people call evil happens from the adverse ego, believe it or not. It's that driven sense consciousness that is making those things happen in the world or around us. It doesn't have anything to do with God or the spirituality of who we are. It's huge if you really think about it. The adverse ego distorts our thoughts and builds up garbage, and the worst of it is, it makes us think that we must cling to this garbage, when in fact we must let it go. And we all have struggles with letting it go. No matter what that garbage is that we have collected, whether it's thoughts from our past, whether it's somebody, the narcissist who has manipulated us, the egomaniac that we encounter at work or wherever. I mean, we have to learn within ourselves how to move through those situations and not let them be controlling and not making us go to sense consciousness. We can stay in that heaven of spirituality, and definitely we have to let it go. But a lot of factors come into play when we're looking at this. A lot of things build up this within ourselves, you know, and I think when people are in that state of mind, I know for me, when I've been in that state of mind, I don't even know I'm in that state of mind until I take a breath or I look at it later, you know. Do you ever do like an inventory at night before you go to bed, like, oh, this was the day, and oh my gosh, what I said, somebody could have taken that wrong, you know, or, you know, we start beating ourselves up or whatever. And it's a longing within our own self to belong. And I think a lot of people are in that state right now where they have gotten into sense consciousness, and they're looking for something, and they're looking for that belonging, but they keep going back to sense consciousness instead of spiritual consciousness, a higher consciousness that will bring forth more good than they've ever experienced on the sense consciousness path. You got me? Because it's true. We want that instant gratification. And it's a shame, because we have to realize that whatever is standing in the way of us feeling that we are in that higher consciousness is something that we have built up in our own personality, in our own ego. And it could be something that we're, again, just trying to shield ourselves from the outer world. But we have to realize that the spiritual self within us can tumble down all those walls and make us realize we don't have to be in that trap of that behavior. And it's a mindset, but it's also plowing through. And I love this quote. The portal to every next level is through the parts of yourself you avoid. And we do that, don't we? We avoid facing some of this stuff. We avoid, thinking about a different perspective on something that we're hung up on. If we're hung up on something, who is it going to hurt? It's going to hurt ourselves. And it can be anything from politics to what our favorite color is. If we are so adamant about that we try to push that on other people, or we get defensive about it, then we need to go into that level that is blocking that from coming through. Because who cares, really? I love Warren when somebody says, "What's your favorite color?" He'll say, "Well, why can't I like all the colors?" Yeah. True. We all have our favorite color, and when we find somebody that has the same favorite color, we go, "Oh, that's my favorite color too." But instead of saying if somebody has an opposite favorite color, we go, "Oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah, that's a neat color." No, we automatically gravitate to stuff that somebody agrees with us because we're trying to validate ourselves. And that takes us back to that ego, that id, that place of us that goes, "Hey, you've got to believe what I believe, and you've got to be what I am in order to be in my world." And how silly is that? And it's funny that Nelson and I had that discussion this morning just about that we're all different people that come here. And yet we're all great people. We're all in this family together, and I love that, don't you? And that's where we have to be. We have to be able to be in that place where whatever it is that we're avoiding, that we look at and move through it. And know that on the other side of that is what? Good, isn't it? Yes, it is. And I get that some people have suffered trauma or have been in a place where they get defensive and protective because of that trauma. I understand that. But we still have to move through it. We still have to erase those error thoughts, because no matter what the trauma was, that was then. And if we don't erase those error thinking, even about if somebody did something deliberately to you, if you do not change your thinking about it, you are avoiding those levels. You're avoiding receiving some more good, because you're building a wall again. You're blocking yourself from experiencing what you need to do. And it all comes down to point of view. Because haven't you been around somebody that, okay, like you have a group of friends, and this one friend you think is egotistical or narcissistic or whatever, and everybody else thinks they're a wonderful person, and they just go along, and you're like thinking, why doesn't anybody see that? Well, that's your point of view. It's not their point of view, right? And so they're seeing it from their point of view, which might not be the same. That person could be amplifying a whole different vibration to other people than they are to you. And they could come out looking like superstar, and you look like the negative person holding on to something that is negative happening to you. So sometimes in that moment, what we have to do is we have to take a breath, and we have to recenter on the true judge, God. Center on that Christ within and say, hey, it doesn't matter what this person has done or who they are or how they're reacting. I can have a new experience and maybe observe somebody else's perspective of this person, or maybe talk to somebody else about it that doesn't see it, and realize that, hey, there's another way to look at this, and I don't have to be sucked in to my own judgment on that person or feeling about that person. You got me? I mean, it's huge because it changes our own viewpoint, our own perspective, and that's where we need to go. Think about this, social media. Whoops. Well, I don't know where that came from, but this is about error thoughts. And all the while they are searching for validation from the outside of who they are as a person, when all they need to do is find the essence of who they truly are, a child of God. When we are struggling, when we are in that place of being angry or having those error thoughts about somebody else or whatever. This is what I'm talking about. And changing our point of view. So social media, you think about that if you want to know about point of view, because you know, everything we see on social media, we start believing is the truth, don't we?
No.
A lot of people do. And I'm glad you don't, because this is what we have to do. Everything that pops up, we have to really look at it and go, well, that sounds a little wacky. Or take it within and take a pause and go, no, that isn't the way it happened. And realize that it's all manipulation it's like the most egotistical, narcissistic being on earth, social media is. Because what are they trying to do? They're trying to make you convinced that they are right, that they are better than the gospel, that they are better than God. I mean, think about it. The most egotistical thing is social media saying, okay, so George Washington was not the first president. And, you know, then you get this whole conspiracy theory happening after that, whatever. I mean, it's just so ridiculous sometimes. And some of it you can laugh at and go, no, that's not right. And now that AI has gotten into it too, you've got these people that are convincing you that this is the gospel, that this is the way it is. And so then we've even got more of that kind of cray-cray going on. And you know, if you think about kids and stuff on social media all the time, constantly scrolling, constantly doing stuff with their phones or iPads or whatever. I mean, you think about that and you think about how are they going to find truth? How are they going to be able to turn within and find the Christ within them if they're believing a bunch of garbage? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just, we have to start thinking about that for our own sake and for their sake, because we want them to evolve into being able to find the truth. And you know, it's kind of funny because I thought about the library, you know, and going to the library. But I look up stuff on online dictionary all the time, and now AI gives you these little summaries that you go, okay, well, are you just giving me the summary that I want to hear, or is this really the definition? Because I just really want to know the definition from the dictionary. And it's like you need to go start stacking up books or getting out your old encyclopedias, you know, to find the facts. And how many people go to the library anymore? Nobody. You know? Yes, Larry goes every day, darn it. She goes every day to the library. Of course, she is a middle school teacher, and her job is media specialist, and she's the librarian. But our ego can be the fulcrum for us to find that balance. You know, we don't have to Google everything. We don't have to look up everything. We can just go within and say, hey, God, you know, come on. Give me some guidance on this. Direct me in the right way. Help me find truth. Help me know. And when kids ask a question, we can say, hey, well, what do you think? Because it's the power of our own minds. We know we have powerful minds. Fillmore defined that a long time ago in the law of mind action. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So what kind of thoughts do we want to have? We want to have thoughts of good, right? And we have to realize that all of our memories are memories that are built on our own perspective. And we all know, I got 9 brothers and sisters. Well, they're not all alive now, but they all had a different perspective for everything that ever happened. And their perspective is their perspective. We just take a breath and we go, hey, okay, that's your perspective, but you really want to know what happened? But, you know, we have to be able to realize that everybody's going to have a little different view on things. And that's okay, isn't it?
Yes.
That's how we make a great movie, I think. You know, some of the best movies are those ones with all the twists in there, and when you meld them all together. But we can always go to God. We can always go within and find our guidance. And this is a little thing I used a long time ago. Quote, whatever you want to call it. Acronym. It's an acronym that I used. And it's from another Unity minister, Reverend Hypatia Hasbrook, who is no longer on the earth, but one with God. And she said this about finding guidance. G is for God. You and I dance. So spell the word guidance. G-U-I-D-A-N-C-E. God, you and I dance. And when you are dancing with God, it'll be the best dance you've ever had. It'll always resolve any issues you have. It'll always bring forth your highest good. So it's the perfect dance to have when you are following guidance. And from the revealing word, Fillmore says, ego is the I. So we're back to knowing that the I, that's the Latin term. The I that is in the I am. And the I am is what? The I am is the I am. The I am is our Christ connection, our Christ consciousness. All that comes forth through us from God. He also says the ego is man, and the ego is man. And by reason of his divinity, he makes and remakes as he wills. In this life is his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. Two-sided coin. We get to choose, don't we? Always. And it can be a push and pull struggle for some people. We have to realize that. The ego of itself is possessed of nothing. It is a mere ignorant child of innocence, floating in the mind of being, floating in God. It is innocent. But through the door of its consciousness must pass all the treasures of God. So even though we have no control over that, at the same time we do have control. Because whatever we want to bring forth, we know that that higher consciousness is there to bring it forth. And that innocent child of God that's bruised or struggling can be healed. And that's a cool thing. Because then we can find satisfaction in that. And I know I've had moments in my life where I begged God for help. Haven't we all?
Oh, yeah.
And we've all been there where we are struggling, where we want to bring forth something. Yep. And sometimes we sit there and start talking to God like it's all God's fault. Right? We have. And when that happens, we have to realize, hey, our ego's out of balance. The old id is, sitting there saying, hey, it's all about me. Instead of saying, I'm finding the balance. I'm going to that Christ within. I'm going to find the answer to this thing, and I'm not going to allow it to let me react. But for me, until I really and truly believe God is good and only good, and I hope we all believe that, could I change my thinking and thoughts about what was going on in my life and how I was the one who allowed it to wreak havoc in my consciousness? Right. We are the ones who choose whether or not we're going to let havoc and chaos and turmoil happen within us. It's not anybody else's fault. It's not the narcissist. It's not the egotism. It's our own ego that has to find the balance, that has to be in that perfect place. And every time we change, we realign with that great spirit within us that can bring forth something better. The spiritual ego is the true self, an individualized center of God consciousness, the I am conscious identity. That's from Fillmore 2. And this is where we want to live from, isn't it? We want to live from that conscious identity, that we have God consciousness within us, so we can bring forth all the balance that we need at any time of any day. And we can let our ego rest and know that the minute we take that breath and turn within to prayer with prayer and see that for ourselves, changes everything. If we strengthen the I am within us through affirming truth, we will soon discover the I in ego. Thank you for being here.